In this video, we follow Amelia's journey from heartbreak and rejection to discovering the secret psychology behind why people miss you. As she explores concepts like emotional detachment, scarcity, and the dopamine loop, Amelia begins to unravel a web of manipulation that forces her to reclaim her identity and power, leading to a shocking revelation that changes everything. Through her journey, she learns that the real key to being unforgettable is not about making others miss you, but about never losing yourself. The unseen void. Amelia sat at her desk, staring at her phone's screen, the last message she'd sent lingering like an open wound. "Hey, just checking in. Hope everything's okay." Smiling face with smiling eyes. It had been 3 days since she had sent 3 days of deafening silence. The once familiar rhythm of texts and calls had vanished, leaving a gaping hole where connection had once been. Her apartment felt emptier than usual, the muted hum of city life outside failing to drown out the nagging questions swirling in her mind. What did I do wrong? Was I too much, not enough? She scrolled back through their conversations, dissecting every emoji, every punctuation mark, in search of a clue. The ache of rejection settled deep in her chest, blending with the sting of embarrassment. She couldn't bring herself to tell her friends. Their well-meaning advice would only add salt to the wound. Instead, she sought refuge online, typing "why do men ghost" into the search bar like a desperate prayer for answers. The results led her down a rabbit hole of articles, advice columns, and forums. One headline caught her eye: "Why absence makes the heart grow fonder, the psychology of being missed." It felt like a lifeline, promising clarity in her chaos. She clicked on it, and the words seemed to reach out from the screen, mirroring her pain and confusion with uncanny precision. The article delved into the concept of emotional scarcity, explaining how distance could amplify desire. Amelia found herself nodding, a flicker of understanding piercing through her haze of self-doubt. The author's voice was empathetic yet incisive, as if they lived her exact experience. Near the bottom of the page, a short bio caught her attention: Dr. Adrienne Wells, behavioral psychologist and author of The Paradox of Longing. The name meant nothing to her, but something about it stirred an unsettling familiarity. She couldn't shake the feeling that the stranger understood her too well, as though the words were written just for her. For the first time in days, Amelia felt a spark of something other than despair. It wasn't hope, exactly, but the faintest whisper of curiosity, a thread she couldn't resist pulling. The scarcity trap. Amelia couldn't stop thinking about the article. The concept of emotional scarcity stuck in her mind like a melody she couldn't shake. The idea that being less available could somehow make her more desirable felt counterintuitive, yet the logic was undeniable. People value what they fear losing, the article had said. She stared at the sentence, its truth both liberating and unsettling. She decided to test it. Her first experiment was small. She ignored a text from a coworker who often bombarded her with trivial updates. Hours turned into a full day before she responded, and to her surprise, his next message carried a sense of urgency. It wasn't just her imagination pulling back had shifted the dynamic. Encouraged, Amelia began withdrawing subtly in other areas. She stopped initiating conversations with friends who only seemed interested when it suited them. Her weekends, once packed with obligatory plans, became a space for solitude. It felt strange at first, like walking on unfamiliar terrain, but the quiet brought her clarity. What shocked her most was how people reacted. A friend she hadn't spoken to in months suddenly reached out: "I've been thinking about you. Let's catch up." Another old acquaintance texted late one evening: "You crossed my mind today, how are you?" But the most unexpected twist came when Liam, her high school boyfriend, messaged her out of the blue. His name lit up her phone like a ghost from her past. "Hey, Amelia. Long time. How have you been?" The casual tone belied the years of silence, and yet, she couldn't deny the small thrill of curiosity his message evoked. It didn't stop there. Over the next week, more familiar names reappeared. An ex-colleague who once brushed her off now seemed eager to reconnect. A guy she briefly dated years ago asked if she wanted to grab coffee. Amelia couldn't ignore the pattern. The less she tried to hold on, the more people seemed drawn to her. Yet, beneath the surface, unease began to creep in. What were their true intentions? Was this newfound attention a reflection of her own growth or something else entirely? The article's lessons were working, but at what cost? Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that playing with scarcity might be as dangerous as it was empowering. The dopamine loop. Amelia leaned back on her couch, scrolling through her phone with an almost mechanical rhythm. Her thumb swiped up, her eyes scanning the glowing screen, but nothing seemed to hold her attention. It wasn't the content itself. Pictures of vacation spots, engagement announcements, and motivational quotes filled her feed. It was the hollow sensation each post left behind. The article's words echoed in her mind: the brain is wired to crave dopamine, the chemical of anticipation. It's not the reward that hooks you, it's the chase. She recognized the cycle. Every notification, every like, every reply, had been a tiny hit of dopamine, keeping her locked in a loop of longing, not just for people, but for validation. Her chest tightened as she stared at the app icons neatly lined up on her phone. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, they weren't just distractions, they were fueling her restlessness. She thought back to the sleepless nights spent refreshing her inbox, hoping for a text that never came. "I'm addicted," she whispered to herself, the words a bitter confession. That night, Amelia made a bold decision. She opened each app, navigated to the settings, and clicked deactivate. As she logged out of her last account, a wave of unease rolled over her. Without the constant buzz of notifications, what would fill the silence the first 24 hours were excruciating. She reached for her phone out of habit, only to realize there was nothing to check. The emptiness felt heavier than she anticipated, like a void she couldn't escape. But beneath the discomfort was a faint glimmer of freedom, a sense that she was reclaiming something she'd unknowingly given away. On the second night, as she sat journaling to distract herself, her phone buzzed. The sound startled her. It had been silent for 2 days. Her heart raced as she picked it up. It was a message. From him. "Hey, Amelia. It's been a while. I've been meaning to reach out." Her hands trembled as she stared at the screen. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Why now? The timing felt too strange to be a coincidence, almost as if he'd sensed her absence. She read the message again, her mind racing. Was it an olive branch, a manipulation, or something else entirely? The irony wasn't lost on her. She stepped away from the digital noise to find clarity, yet here it was, pulling her back in. The dopamine loop wasn't just in her apps, it was in her relationships, her memories, and the unspoken questions she desperately needed answers to. The art of detachment. Amelia stood in front of the mirror, studying her reflection. The woman staring back at her wasn't the same one who had been drowning in the silence of ghosted texts and unanswered calls. The lines of her face, once marked by uncertainty, now carried an edge of resolve. She had learned to embrace the space she'd created, not just between herself and others, but between herself and her own insecurities. It wasn't just about pulling away anymore. She was becoming deliberate, controlled. The art of detachment wasn't about ignoring people, it was about holding your ground, choosing when to engage and when to withdraw. Her newfound confidence felt exhilarating, like she had discovered a secret language that only she could understand. At work, she began setting boundaries with ease, no longer sacrificing her time or energy for the sake of being liked. She declined social invites without guilt, and when she did attend events, she wasn't the center of attention, but she didn't mind. The subtlety of her presence became magnetic, and she relished in it. But the real test came when he reached out. Liam. The ex she'd never truly gotten over, the one who still haunted her dreams despite the distance she had put between them. His message from a few days ago still lingered in her inbox, unread. She had been tempted to respond, but the new Amelia resisted. She wasn't going to play by his rules. He'd always been the one to call the shots, and this time, the tables had turned. Yet, when she saw him in person a week later at a friend's party, the power dynamic shifted again. He was different, more assertive, more intense. The moment their eyes met across the room, something flickered between them, a silent recognition that both had changed. Amelia was no longer the woman who waited for texts. She wasn't the one who scrambled for validation. But despite her progress, she couldn't help the warmth that spread through her chest at his presence. She kept her distance, her gaze steady, though every part of her wanted to lean in, to feel that old spark. They exchanged pleasantries, and as he walked away, he gave her a look that carried so much unspoken history. But then, something even more unexpected happened. The next day, her boss, Nathan, the charming yet aloof married man she had worked under for years, invited her to lunch. It wasn't unusual for them to meet to discuss work, but this invitation felt different, more personal. He was a seasoned professional, always maintaining an air of composure, but Amelia sensed the shift in his tone. It was casual, but his eyes lingered a little too long, his smile a little too warm. They sat at a trendy cafe, the conversation flowing easily at first. But Amelia noticed how Nathan seemed more engaged, more interested in her personal life than usual. He was used to being in control, always the one to dictate the direction of their interactions. But now, she was the one who had control over the tempo of the conversation. She didn't offer up too much, didn't reveal too much of herself. Her detachment, she realized, had become her shield. It had its limits. She wasn't immune to his charm, but she could feel the power shift. She had never thought of Nathan in that way, but today, there was something magnetic in the way he watched her, something she couldn't quite place. By the end of lunch, Amelia felt a sense of quiet triumph. She was no longer a passive participant in her own life. The balance between distance and intimacy had transformed her. She wasn't playing games, she was simply refusing to give more than what she was willing to receive. But as she walked back to her office, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Liam. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I want to talk. Really talk this time. Let me know if you're free." Amelia's heart skipped a beat, but she didn't reply immediately. She sat with the message, letting it sink in. She could feel the pull, the temptation to go back to what was familiar, what felt easy. But then she thought of Nathan, of the power she had just tasted, of how different everything felt now. It was time to test the limits of her newfound detachment. The memory trigger. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when Amelia ran into Daniel. She hadn't expected to see him, not after all these years. Daniel was an old friend from college, someone she had once shared a deep, easy connection with before life had pulled them in different directions. The last time they'd spoken, they had parted ways on amicable terms, both busy with careers, relationships, and their own personal journeys. But there he was, standing at the counter of the coffee shop she frequented, a warm smile playing on his lips as if no time had passed. His eyes, the same shade of brown she remembered, softened when they met hers. For a moment, Amelia felt the weight of nostalgia settle over her. It was an odd feeling, like stepping into a time capsule, catching glimpses of a version of herself she had almost forgotten. Amelia, Daniel's voice cut through her reverie. "It's really you." She smiled, though there was a small flutter in her chest. "It's been ages, Daniel." They sat down at a small table by the window, the city bustling outside, but for a brief moment, it was just the two of them. The conversation began casually, updates on mutual friends, career changes, the usual small talk. But as the hours passed, something shifted. Daniel's presence was different now, more grounded. His eyes lingered on her in a way that made her feel both seen and exposed. "I've missed this," Daniel said softly, his voice more serious now. "You know, you were one of the few people I really felt connected to back then. I never told you this, but you had a way of making everything seem better, easier. I've thought about you a lot over the years." Amelia felt a lump form in her throat. His words, simple but honest, caught her off guard. She hadn't realized how much she'd affected him back then, or how much he'd meant to her. She had always seen their friendship as a chapter in the past, but now, the pages felt like they had been left unfinished. "I never realized," Amelia said softly, trying to find the right words. "I mean, I always thought we were just friends." Daniel gave a small laugh, but it wasn't the kind of laughter she remembered. There was a quiet vulnerability in it. "That's the thing, isn't it? We always think we know where we stand. But sometimes, we don't realize how much we've been holding back until it's too late." He paused, his gaze meeting hers with an intensity she hadn't expected. "I never stopped thinking about you, Amelia. I don't know what happened, but I just wanted you to know that I've always had feelings for you." The confession hung in the air like a delicate thread, too fragile to touch but impossible to ignore. Amelia's heart skipped a beat, but her mind spun in a dozen different directions. This was the last thing she had expected. Daniel, the friend who had always been just that, an old friend. She tried to steady her thoughts, but a wave of conflicting emotions surged through her. Part of her wanted to reach out, to embrace the unexpected possibility that maybe the feelings had always been mutual, that something deeper had been simmering beneath the surface all these years. But the other part of her, the part that had learned the art of detachment, the part that had spent months mastering the delicate balance between presence and distance, was afraid. She had spent so much time cultivating a sense of self-reliance, of emotional independence, that allowing herself to fall back into the past felt like a betrayal. A betrayal of her own growth. "I didn't know," Amelia whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I had no idea you felt that way." Daniel nodded, his expression softening. "I didn't expect you to. I've always kept it to myself. But when I saw you again, I realized that the things I never said were still there. I needed you to know." Amelia looked down at her coffee, the steam rising in delicate curls. She hadn't known what to say, hadn't known what she wanted. She had changed. She had grown. And yet, in this moment, she felt the weight of everything she had been before, the girl who had been so unsure, so eager to please. Her mind wandered back to the conversations with her ex, to the feelings of longing and desire she had tried so hard to suppress. Was this another case of nostalgia, another emotional echo from the past, or was there something more here, something real, something worth exploring? As she glanced up at Daniel, she realized the impact of what he was saying. Memories, subtle as they were, could hold more power than any present moment. The way a look, a word, or even a simple gesture could leave a lasting imprint on someone's heart. Amelia wondered if that was the truth she had been missing. "You don't have to say anything right now," Daniel continued gently, as if sensing her internal battle. "I just wanted you to know. I'm not looking for anything from you. I just needed you to hear me out." Amelia nodded slowly, her thoughts swirling. She wasn't sure where this would lead, or if it would lead anywhere at all. But one thing was certain, she couldn't ignore the power of memory, of the impact of small moments. They could shape the future, just as much as they shaped the past. The danger of mystery. Amelia had never thought of herself as an enigmatic figure. She had always been open, honest, a little too eager to share, especially when it came to her relationships. But now, after months of experimenting with emotional detachment, she was beginning to see how much power lay in mystery, the art of withholding, of leaving just enough unsaid to keep someone on their toes. It was subtle at first. Small changes in how she responded to texts, in how often she made herself available. She learned that mystery wasn't about playing hard to get, it was about self-preservation. It was about keeping a part of herself hidden, something that no one could claim, not even the people who thought they knew her best. The shift was slow, but it was unmistakable. When her ex, Liam, reached out again, his tone had changed. His messages weren't just casual inquiries anymore. He had begun to probe, to ask deeper, more personal questions, ones that suggested he was trying to understand her emotional landscape in a way he hadn't before. He had always been the one to dictate the rhythm of their relationship. He'd been the one who would pull away and come back when it suited him, leaving her dangling in uncertainty. But now, with Amelia at the helm, things were different. She wasn't responding to his demands, wasn't scrambling to fill the spaces he left. The roles had reversed, and it had rattled him. One evening, after several days of cryptic texts from him, Amelia finally agreed to meet him in person. She decided that this time, she wouldn't be the one to chase. She would let him come to her, let him feel the sting of her absence. They met at a quiet bar downtown, a place they had frequented during their time together. The dim lighting, the hum of conversation, the clinking of glasses, all of it felt familiar, but there was an undeniable shift in the air between them. Liam sat across from her, his usual confident posture giving way to an unease that she hadn't seen before. "Amelia," he began, leaning forward, "I don't know what's going on with you lately. You've been distant, cold even." Amelia didn't flinch. She simply raised an eyebrow, taking a sip of her drink. She had mastered the art of stillness, of controlling her body language to give nothing away. "It's not that I'm cold," she said, her voice smooth. "I'm just not chasing anymore. I don't think you like that very much, do you?" Liam looked momentarily taken aback, his eyes searching hers as though trying to decipher a code. Amelia's nonchalance seemed to unsettle him more than she had anticipated. For the first time, he wasn't the one holding the power in the conversation. She was. "You've changed," he muttered, almost to himself. "I don't know what happened to the girl I used to know. You used to be so eager, so full of life. Now, it's like you're a different person." Amelia smiled, but it wasn't a smile of warmth. It was the smile of someone who had learned the rules of the game and was playing it expertly. She knew exactly what he was feeling: confusion, frustration, even a bit of desperation. And she felt a strange sense of satisfaction at knowing she had caused it. "Maybe I've just realized that I can't keep giving people more of myself than they're willing to give back," she said, leaning in slightly, her tone still even but with an undercurrent of finality. "Maybe I've learned that my worth isn't tied to how much I'm needed, or how much I'm available." Liam's eyes darkened, and for a moment, Amelia saw a flash of something unsettling: a hunger, perhaps, or an anger. He was no longer the man who had once controlled the dynamics of their relationship. He was vulnerable now, exposed by his own obsession with her detachment. "I don't know who you are anymore," Liam said, his voice thick with frustration. "But I can't stop thinking about you. Why do you have to be so difficult?" Amelia pulled back, a sense of satisfaction washing over her. She wasn't playing games. She was simply owning her space, her silence, her autonomy. But there was something unsettling about the way Liam's eyes lingered on her, something that felt more possessive than passionate. That night, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that her detachment had taken a darker turn. As she reflected on her conversation with Liam, she realized that the power she had gained from withholding was intoxicating, but it was also dangerous. The line between control and manipulation was thin, and the more she distanced herself, the more she saw Liam's obsession grow. But then, something even more disturbing occurred. The next day, Amelia received a text from a mutual friend, Kayla, asking if she had been talking to Liam recently. Amelia was confused. She hadn't shared any details of her encounter with him, and yet it seemed like Kayla knew something. "Why do you ask?" Amelia responded, her curiosity piqued. Kayla hesitated before replying, "Because I think he's been using the same tactics you've been using on him. He's been pulling away, being distant, making me chase him. It's almost like he's trying to do exactly what you did, but it feels wrong." Amelia's stomach churned as the realization hit her. She wasn't the only one using detachment as a tool. Liam had learned from her, taken her strategy and twisted it, using it to manipulate Kayla into chasing him, just as he had once manipulated her. The web of emotional manipulation that she had once been tangled in was now ensnaring someone else. And for the first time, Amelia saw the darker side of what she had been doing. She wasn't just playing with fire, she was lighting the match. The scarcity backlash. Amelia sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through her phone, but her mind was elsewhere. The familiar ping of a new message broke through her thoughts. It was from Liam. He had been texting her more frequently lately, but the messages were different now, more desperate, more pointed. "Amelia," he wrote, "I can't keep doing this. You've made it clear you don't want me around. But I can't stop thinking about you. This back and forth, it's exhausting." She felt a strange sense of power surge through her as she read the words. This was what she wanted, wasn't it? She had created distance. She had let him feel the sting of her absence. She had put into practice everything she had learned about the power of emotional scarcity. And yet, now that she was in the thick of it, she wasn't so sure it was worth it. The back and forth was exactly as she had hoped. Liam had come running, just like the theory predicted. His messages, once full of demands, were now full of longing. He seemed to want her more than ever. But Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The emotional distance she had created wasn't building love, it was amplifying something darker. It was inflating insecurities, stirring up old wounds, and feeding on unresolved tension. She had gained power over him, but at what cost? Was it really love she was creating, or just an illusion, a game of emotional cat and mouse that only deepened the cracks in their already fragile relationship? Amelia stared at the screen, her finger hovering over the send button. She had learned to stay composed, to be unpredictable, to play her cards just right. But now, a gnawing doubt began to creep in. Was it possible that she was simply manipulating his feelings, and not in the way she had intended? Was her detachment breeding resentment rather than love? Was this the kind of emotional power she had been seeking? Just as she was about to type a response, something neutral, something that would keep him at arm's length, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from an unknown number. Amelia, be careful. Someone close to you is using your own tactics against you. You're being manipulated. The text was short, cryptic, and sent a chill down her spine. The sender didn't identify themselves, but the tone of the message was ominous, urgent even. Amelia's heart raced as she read it again, trying to make sense of it. Who could it be? For a moment, her thoughts raced. Was it Liam? Was he trying to pull her back into a game of power, trying to manipulate her the way he had done before? Or was it someone else, someone who had noticed the shift in her behavior, someone who was aware of the subtle game she was playing? The idea that someone close to her, someone who knew her intimately, was using her own methods of emotional detachment against her sent a wave of unease through her. Was this the cost of her newfound control? Was her manipulation becoming a double-edged sword? Amelia felt the walls of her world closing in. She had always been in control, pulling the strings in her relationships, gaining power over her emotions, her connections, her worth. But now, that control seemed to be slipping. She couldn't shake the feeling that her detachment wasn't just affecting Liam, it was creating a ripple effect, one that she couldn't quite grasp. What if she had inadvertently turned the tables on herself? As the days passed, the messages from Liam became more insistent, his tone shifting from longing to irritation. He was no longer the patient man who had once waited for her response, now he was demanding it. "You're playing with fire, Amelia," one message read. "I can't do this anymore. I don't care what you're trying to prove, but you've taken this too far. I can't stand the way you're pulling away." The words cut deeper than Amelia expected. There was a venom in them, a bitterness that hadn't been there before. He wasn't just missing her anymore, he was angry. Angry at the distance, angry at the game she was playing, angry at being out of control. And then came the final text: "I won't keep chasing you. I don't even know who you are anymore." Amelia felt her chest tighten. The satisfaction she had felt at the beginning of her emotional detachment, the sense of power, was now a distant memory. Instead of love, she had sparked something uglier. She had built walls, but those walls had only imprisoned her. And then, as if the universe was playing a cruel joke, the anonymous message came again. This time, the words were clearer, more pointed. "You're being watched, Amelia. Someone is manipulating you for their own gain. They want to control you. You're not in control anymore." Her breath hitched. This time, she couldn't ignore it. Whoever was sending these messages knew too much. They knew about the games she had been playing, about the detachment she had embraced. They knew about her vulnerabilities, her insecurities. It was becoming impossible to ignore. The pieces were falling into place, but they didn't make any sense. Who was manipulating her? Who was behind these cryptic warnings? In the silence that followed the last message, Amelia finally allowed herself to sit with the unsettling truth. She wasn't just playing with Liam anymore. She was playing with something much bigger. Something that had been quietly influencing her every move. And now, that force was closing in. The paradox of desire. Amelia's heart pounded as she stood outside the glass doors of the swanky downtown cafe, peering through the tinted windows. Liam was inside, sitting at a table, staring down at his phone, his face set in a mixture of frustration and something else, something darker. The message from earlier that day still echoed in her mind. "I've been to the seminars, Amelia. It's time we talked." She had read it over and over, unable to fully grasp what he was implying. Seminars on psychological attraction. The phrase felt foreign, almost sinister. But here she was, standing in front of him, and the weight of the moment made everything seem surreal. Her mind flashed back to the days of emotional manipulation she had put him through, pulling away, testing the limits of her detachment. Had she unknowingly sparked something much more dangerous? And now, as he sat there, waiting for her, the strange feeling of control she had once felt seemed like a distant, fading memory. She took a deep breath, pushing the door open and walking in. As soon as she entered, Liam looked up. His eyes softened when he saw her, but there was an edge of something unfamiliar in his gaze, a calculated coldness that sent a shiver down her spine. "Amelia," he said, his voice low but tinged with a hint of something that wasn't quite right. "I'm glad you came." She didn't sit immediately. Instead, she stood across from him, studying his face. "Liam, what's going on? What do you mean by these seminars?" He leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving hers. "I've been learning more about how people work. How attraction works. How we're all affected by subconscious triggers." He hesitated, then added, "I've been attending seminars led by Dr. Samuel Crane." Her breath caught. Dr. Crane. The name hit her like a slap in the face, and for a moment, Amelia's mind reeled. The psychologist who had written the article she found months ago, the one that started her entire journey. The man who seemed to know everything about longing, absence, and desire. The man who had planted the seed of obsession in her mind. "You're kidding," Amelia said, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to stay composed. "You've been learning from him?" The same psychologist who she cut herself off, suddenly realizing the gravity of the situation. Liam's lips curled into a small, almost unsettling smile. "Yes. The same one." "You've read his work, haven't you?" "I figured you might have. I saw the way you responded to that article. It was almost like you were looking for something, answers, maybe." Amelia's thoughts spiraled, racing to piece together the fragments of this increasingly twisted puzzle. "But why would you need to learn this stuff? I thought you just wanted to fix things between us." The words felt hollow as they left her lips. She realized, with a sickening jolt, that she wasn't just questioning him, she was questioning everything she thought she knew about their relationship. Liam's gaze sharpened, and for the first time, Amelia noticed a glint of something darker in his eyes, an intensity she hadn't seen before. "It's not just about fixing things between us, Amelia," he said slowly. "It's about understanding why we do what we do. Why we chase after people who pull away. Why we want what we can't have." He leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. "And you're the perfect example of that." Amelia's pulse quickened. The room seemed to close in around her. "What do you mean, perfect example?" Liam's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You've been playing this game of detachment, haven't you, using what you learned to make me chase you. To make me want you more. But the truth is, Amelia," he paused, the words hanging in the air, "you're not the only one who has learned these tricks." Her mind raced. He knew. He had been studying her every move, using the same tactics she had been using on him. She had thought she was the one pulling the strings, the one with the power. But now she realized that Liam had been playing her all along. He wasn't just some passive participant in her manipulations. He had been learning how to control her, how to push her buttons, how to make her feel desired just long enough to keep her hooked. A sickening realization settled over Amelia like a heavy weight. You've been manipulating me, just like I've been manipulating you. Liam nodded, his expression softening with an unsettling sense of satisfaction. Exactly. You see, Dr. Crane's work isn't just about getting people to chase you. It's about understanding the psychology of desire itself. The way absence makes the heart grow fonder. The way we crave what we can't have. And the way we control each other through those desires. The room felt suffocating. Amelia could hardly breathe, her mind struggling to comprehend the enormity of what Liam was saying. The psychologist she had trusted, the very man whose article had led her down this dark path, had turned everything she thought she knew upside down. She wasn't the only one being tested. She wasn't the only one being manipulated. And worst of all, she wasn't the one in control anymore. The silence between them stretched, filled with the weight of unspoken truths. Amelia stared at Liam, her thoughts swirling in a fog of disbelief and betrayal. She had thought she was playing a game of emotional chess, but now she realized she had been a pawn all along. Dr. Crane, Amelia said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear, you and your seminars. You've been using us. All of us. Liam's gaze hardened. We've all been using each other, Amelia. You were never just a pawn. You're part of the experiment. We all are. He paused, his eyes locking with hers. But you were the most interesting part of it all. You took the bait. You dug deeper. You started to question everything. Amelia's stomach churned. And now you want me to play the game with you. To keep chasing this fantasy. Liam's smile faltered slightly. No, Amelia. I want you to wake up. To see the truth. We're all caught in a cycle of desire and manipulation. But it doesn't have to be this way. We can break free. If you're willing to see what's really going on. Amelia's heart raced. She was trapped in a web of deception, spun by the very man she had trusted, the very person she had once thought loved her. But now, the lines between love and manipulation were so blurred, she could no longer tell which was which. In that moment, Amelia realized that the true battle wasn't between her and Liam, it was against the forces that had orchestrated this entire charade. She wasn't just playing with him. She was playing with forces much bigger than both of them, forces that were shaping their every move, their every decision. And she was running out of time. The shocking revelation. Amelia's hands shook as she stared at the letter in front of her, the words etched into her mind like a permanent scar. It had arrived late last night, a simple envelope with no return address, just her name written in block letters. The contents had been chilling. You've been played. It's not just about you. You've been part of something much bigger. Your influence is being shaped. And the person who holds the strings is closer than you think. You've been a pawn in a game you don't understand. Watch your back. At first, Amelia had dismissed it. Another twisted game, another attempt to destabilize her, but now, everything that had happened over the last few days, the seminars, the manipulation, the psychology experiments, felt like an elaborate setup. It wasn't just Liam and Dr. Crane. There were bigger forces at work. Her mind raced, piecing together the fragments of the past few months. Her boss, Richard, had always been controlling, always pushing her into situations where she felt exposed, vulnerable. But it wasn't just about control in the office. No, it was more insidious than that. Richard had been monitoring her every move, every decision. The articles she wrote, the psychological concepts she explored, even her rise in popularity, all had been influenced by him. He had been grooming her, pulling her into a web of influence, using her as a tool to shape the public's perception. But why? The question echoed in her mind as she sat at her desk, surrounded by half-finished notes and scribbled thoughts. Richard had known about her rising influence. He had known about her growing following, her impact on social media, her voice in the media landscape. What better way to control someone than by getting them to believe they were gaining power, while all along, they were just playing into someone else's hand? Her phone buzzed. She glanced down at the notification, an email from Richard. The subject line was simple: "We need to talk." A cold wave washed over her. Richard had never been subtle. He didn't make requests. He gave orders. And now, it seemed, the scales had tipped. She had become a threat to him. He wanted to reel her back in. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she debated her next move. She could go to his office, confront him. But part of her already knew that it wouldn't be a confrontation. It would be a game of manipulation, a chess match she wasn't sure she could win. She quickly typed out a response, her words sharp, controlled. "We have nothing more to discuss." But as soon as she hit send, her phone buzzed again. It was Richard. His response was immediate. "You think you're free, Amelia? Think again. You're already in too deep." Her stomach dropped. There it was. The cold, calculating tone that had always made her feel small, insignificant, but now, it felt like a threat. A warning. She needed answers. She needed to understand what had happened and why. Without wasting another moment, Amelia grabbed her coat and stormed out of her office. She wasn't sure what she was going to do, but she knew one thing: she couldn't stay in the dark any longer. She had to confront Richard. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like an eternity. Every floor that passed felt like an endless cycle of time spinning away from her. By the time the elevator doors opened, she felt as though she had already lost control of everything. Richard's office was at the end of the hallway, a glass-paneled room that looked out over the city. She approached it cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. She knocked once, and without waiting for an invitation, she opened the door. Richard was sitting at his desk, his back to the window, his fingers steepled in front of him. He didn't even look up when she entered. "Amelia," he said, his voice smooth and condescending. "You've made quite an impact lately." She slammed the letter onto his desk, her eyes burning with anger. "Is this you? Are you the one behind everything?" Richard finally looked up, a small, self-satisfied smile curling at the corners of his lips. "I think you know the answer to that." Her pulse quickened. Why me?" "Why not you?" he replied, leaning back in his chair. "You've always had an air of power about you. You were perfect for the role." Amelia's head spun. "The role of what?" "The role of the influencer," he said, as if the answer should have been obvious. "You see, Amelia, the world is changing. People don't just consume information, they're manipulated by it. You've been the perfect vessel for spreading ideas I've carefully curated. We've been preparing you for this moment for months. And you've been so eager to believe that you were in control. That you were breaking free. But you were never free. You've always been part of the plan. Her heart pounded in her ears as Richard's words sank in. She wasn't just a subject in a psychological experiment. She was a puppet manipulated not just for her personal growth, but to shape the opinions of thousands of people. She had been used to promote ideas, to push a narrative, all while believing she was gaining independence. "And Dr. Crane?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Richard's smile deepened. "Dr. Crane is just the beginning. He is part of a larger network, one that taps into the psychology of desire, of longing, of influence. And now, you're part of that network too, Amelia." A cold chill ran through her. The experiments weren't just about her emotions. They were about controlling the masses, influencing the public without them ever realizing it. Amelia wasn't just being manipulated, she was part of a much bigger game. A game where the stakes were her very sense of self. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. The influence she had gained, the attention she had courted, the voice she had built, all of it had been carefully orchestrated. She had been a pawn, and now, she was at the mercy of the very people who had created her. "Everything I've done," she whispered, her voice cracking, "was because of you." Richard's expression softened, almost pitying. "No, Amelia. Everything you've done was because of you. You just didn't know who you were working for." Her body trembled with a mix of anger and devastation. The walls that had once felt like freedom now seemed like a prison. She had been caught in a game, but this time, she wasn't going to be manipulated any longer. "I'm done," she said, her voice firm despite the fear gnawing at her insides. Richard's face darkened. "You can't walk away from this, Amelia. You're already in too deep." But Amelia wasn't listening anymore. She turned on her heel, her mind racing, her heart set on one thing, taking back control. She had been manipulated, betrayed, and used. But she wasn't going to be anyone's pawn anymore. Becoming unforgettable. The night air was cool as Amelia stepped onto the rooftop, the city lights below flickering like a sea of stars. She stood still for a moment, taking it all in, the hum of traffic, the distant chatter of the world continuing on without her. Everything felt so small now. The weight of everything she had learned, everything she had lost, seemed so insignificant compared to what she had gained. She had spent months fighting to break free. From Liam's games. From Richard's manipulation. From the psychological experiments that had stolen her sense of self. But now, standing at the edge of everything, she realized she wasn't free because she had escaped from others. She was free because she had redefined herself. Amelia wasn't the woman they had created. She wasn't the girl obsessed with love and validation, or the influencer desperate for approval. She was something entirely different. She was someone who had taken her life back from the very people who thought they could control it. But the road to freedom hadn't been easy. The manipulation had been deep. Richard's control was more than just emotional, it was psychological, embedded in every decision, every thought. She had been a puppet, and he had pulled the strings with ease. Yet now, it was clear to her, the real power lay not in the ability to control others, but in the ability to remain in control of oneself. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, the screen flashing with a message from Liam. "Where are you? We need to talk." Amelia didn't even look at it. It was a call she had been waiting for. A call that she had once dreaded. But now, it felt irrelevant. She had given too much of herself to others, too much of her energy, too much of her attention. Now, she was reclaiming it all. Her mind was hers again. Her heart was hers again. And anyone who wanted a piece of her would have to earn it. She walked back inside the building and headed for the conference room, her footsteps steady and determined. It was time to confront the truth. The door to the conference room opened, revealing Richard sitting at the head of the table, his usual smug expression plastered across his face. Behind him was a screen, displaying the latest data on Amelia's rising influence. She could see it in his eyes, the flicker of surprise that she was no longer the woman who would comply. "I knew you'd come," Richard said, his voice smooth but laced with an undercurrent of uncertainty. "I knew you couldn't resist." "You're not done yet, Amelia." Amelia took a deep breath. It wasn't fear she felt, but clarity. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She had allowed herself to be part of this experiment for too long, she had fed into the narrative they had created for her. But she wasn't playing anymore. "I'm done, Richard," she said, her voice calm but unwavering. "I'm not your puppet, and I'm not anyone's experiment. The world doesn't need more manipulation. It needs truth." Richard stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "You think you can just walk away? You have no idea what you're dealing with. Do you really think you're the only one who can change the game?" Amelia's lips curled into a small, confident smile. "No. But I know I'm the only one who can change my game." The door opened behind her, and to her surprise, it wasn't just Liam who entered. It was several others, former colleagues, influencers, even a few of Richard's business partners. They had all been swept up in his scheme. And they were all here to see what would happen next. "I've spent too long thinking I had to be part of something bigger," Amelia continued, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. "But I've realized that the most powerful thing I can do is be unapologetically myself. That's what makes me unforgettable. Not the things I've done for you, not the people I've tried to impress, but the person I've learned to be." She turned to face them all, her gaze unwavering. "You all thought you could control me. But the truth is, I've been controlling myself all along. And now, I'm going to make sure the world knows it." The room fell silent. Richard's face twisted in disbelief, while the others exchanged uncertain glances. But Amelia felt no hesitation. The truth was out. The world would know the reality of how these experiments had shaped her and countless others, how emotions were manipulated for profit, how power was wielded under the guise of self-improvement. Amelia didn't just have the power to expose them, she had the power to reclaim her narrative. And that was far more dangerous than anything Richard or anyone else could ever control. "Amelia," Richard sneered, his voice trembling with anger. "You have no idea what you've just done. You're nothing but a pawn in a bigger game." Amelia met his gaze head on. "No, Richard. You're the pawn." A slow smile spread across her face as she took one last look at the room. The weight of her journey was finally lifting. She had taken back her power, and no one, not even Richard, could take it from her again. She turned to leave the room, her back straight, her heart light. The journey ahead would be filled with new challenges, but for the first time, Amelia felt ready. Ready to take on the world, not to manipulate it, not to play the game, but to live it, authentically, on her own terms. And that, she knew, was what would make her unforgettable.